Hi, welcome to part 3 in a short series of videos put out by yuccaflute.com aimed at beginning Native American flute players. In the first lesson we talked just about the nature of the flute, why it's a special instrument, and how the different parts of it work. The second video we talked a little bit about the basic how to make a note, the 5-minute lesson, and doing up and down the scale. And that will get you to basically to this far. And that's a very good place to start. It's probably a good place to stay for beginning players for several days, maybe several weeks. It's to do it at your own pace. But once you're comfortable with the fundamental note, you're comfortable playing the scale and can do it reliably and understand which holes to open and not open, then you can begin to add embellishments, add your own interpretation, add your own emotion. Even if you stay very close to the up and down scale, you can do more interesting things. One such thing, I think people call it a flutter, and it's simply to raise and lower your finger over a hole to get something like this. And it can be interesting. It can also be annoying if overdone, but you can put this into a simple tune to make your scale songs slightly more emotional, slightly more interesting, perhaps like this. You'll notice I just went up and down, except I did a couple of flutters. I did one flutter with just the bottom hole, and another flutter with the top 2 holes. Another interesting thing that you can do, and in fact you should do, is just hold certain notes longer. Rather than simply going up and down, sometimes it can be interesting to extend a note. It also gives you a little bit of a mental gap so that you can think about what you're going to play next. People insert an extended note for emphasis, for drama, and as I said, simply to give them sort of a break so they can compose on the fly. And here's a short example. Nothing fancy, just varying the length of the notes. Similarly, you can make much shorter notes, very short duration notes in an otherwise series of medium or long notes, perhaps like this. I wouldn't call it a flutter because I didn't go like that, but I did raise it up and down a little bit more quickly. So we've got a flutter, we've got an extended note, shortened notes, and then a more complex technique is called vibrato. Opera singers do it. Every singer does it actually. When singing, you typically will flutter your diaphragm to make that sort of a wavy sound. I do it a slightly different way. I use technique in my mouth rather than my diaphragm, but the effect is something like this. I'm sure you could hear the fluttering quality of the note. Basically, I was just going up and down the scale. I did a couple of flutters, and I did that vibrato noise. But I assure you that little tune was completely spontaneous, completely random. I've never heard it before. I probably couldn't do it again. That's one of the beauties of the Native American style flute, is playing what are called Heartsong. Play from your emotion, play in the moment. And many of us play that way rather than actually learning songs. In fact, I find it rather difficult to learn a song and play it in a way that sounds as good as what I'm trying to learn. Personally, I'm usually much more pleased with myself when I'm playing Heartsong like that. Another technique, which I do and some people find interesting, is, well, I don't know what the name would be, so I'll tell you something similar to it first. There's something called a trill, or maybe a flutter-tongue, where almost like rolling an R when you're speaking a Spanish word, like Rodrigo brings us tortillas, right? Ramon lives by the river. So that same rolling R, if you do that into the flute, instead of, you'll get this. And that can be very interesting. It can also be easily overdone, but it would give you effects similar to this. When I do it, personally, it sounds a little bit harsh, and I don't find it as easy to control. I do a similar sound, but rather than fluttering my tongue, I flutter something in my throat, perhaps more like the way a German speaker would pronounce certain words. Rauchen ist nicht gut für die Gesundheit. Rauchen. So it's almost like a gargle. But if I do that into the flute, you'll get that chirpy, chirpy, chirpy quick noise. And once again, used sparingly, it can be very interesting. Like chrome on a Corvette, that can be easily overdone. So keep it to a minimum, use it for accent, don't make it the focal point of a tune. From here, I would say go online, look up Native American flute or Native American style flute embellishments. And the word embellishment will lead you to things like chirps and barks and trills and grace notes. I'll leave it for you to experiment with those and to locate other sources. One very good source, by the way, is flutopedia.com. That's it for now. Thanks.